Hi friends, my name is James Hauptman. I am studying Masters of Divinity at Gordon-Conwell Theological Seminary. It's a privilege to take some of the tools that I've had and share them with you in this way today. So let's dive in to Proverbs 28 together. Now the second half, it continues this theme and it really just contrasts the ways of the wicked versus the ways of the righteous. And it starts with verse 13, which says, "Whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but one who confesses and renounces them, he finds mercy." Here's the thing, friends, is that God won't heal what you and I conceal, but God will heal what we reveal. God can't bless sin. And I want to encourage somebody today, if you're bound up in sin, if you've been living a secret life, if you have things that you have kept secret, if there are things that you've done that you felt, I can never tell anybody about this. I'm going to bring this to the grave. Nobody will ever find out what I've done. Friends, today is the day to confess your sin. Today's the day to come clean. David knows what it was like to live in continual torment for the awareness of his own sin. And he describes being forgiven, and he describes waiting to be forgiven in Psalm 32. He says, "Blessed is the one whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord does not count against them, and whose spirit there is no deceit. But when I kept silent, when I lived with unconfessed sin, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long, for day and night your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Then I acknowledged my sin to you, and I did not cover up my iniquity. And I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin." Friends, if you have unconfessed sin in your life, today is the day to come clean. Find a trusted person you can talk to. Find someone in your church. Find a small group leader. Find a pastor. Find a spiritual friend who is at least as mature as you, if not more mature, and come clean. Now, I can't promise you there won't be any consequences for your sin, but I can promise you that you will find mercy from God. Mercy triumphs over wrath. This verse even says that. The one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy. And friends, this is the good news of the message of Jesus, is that we come to him and we give him our brokenness, our sin, our shame over what we've done. We give him all of our intentional wrongdoing even. And he took that on the cross himself. And he died in place of our sins, and he offers us forgiveness. Instead of shame, he offers us joy. Instead of harm, he offers us freedom. Instead of death, Jesus offers us life. And so if you've been living with unconfessed sin, today is the day to confess it to Jesus and to a friend and find freedom and find life and find hope. Whew. All right, verse 14. "Blessed is the one who always trembles before God, but whoever hardens their heart falls into trouble." It's this same picture. The one who is aware of the greatness of God. But if we harden our hearts, which we can do, we can say, nope, I'm not going to deal with that thing. Nope, I'm not going to let you talk about this thing in my life anymore, God. We can turn our ears to be silent to his voice, and we can harden our hearts. And whenever we do that, we find trouble. Let's keep reading. Verses 15 through 19. "Like a roaring lion or a charging bear is a wicked ruler over a helpless people. A tyrannical ruler practices extortion, but one who hates ill-gotten gain will enjoy a long reign. Anyone tormented by the guilt of murder will seek refuge in the grave, and let no one hold them back. The one whose walk is blameless is kept safe, but the one whose ways are perverse will fall into the pit. Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies will have their fill of poverty." Question for you, friend, is what is your land to work? Now, we may not have physical plots of land to work anymore, but the idea was this, is that if you gave yourself to stewarding the land that was given to you, then you would have an abundance of food. So what is your plot of land? What is your field that God's given you? What is your occupation? What is your family? What is your ministry calling? What is it that God has put in your hand? Where is the place God has called you? I want to encourage you, work that field. Don't chase after other things. We see people chasing after fantasies, and it's heartbreaking to see so much time and effort and energy poured down in something that God doesn't have for them. Don't be like that. Chase after the thing that God has for you and work hard at that. Verse 20 says, a faithful person will be richly blessed, being faithful to steward well what God has given you. But one eager to get rich will not go unpunished. Now, the only way to get rich quick in a society that was based on agriculture was to cheat people out of land, to take people and sell them into slavery, to steal from someone. So one eager to get rich is a cheater, and God sees that, and God will punish them. Verses 21 through 23, to show partiality is not good, yet a person will do wrong for a piece of bread. The stingy are eager to get rich and are unaware that poverty awaits them. Whoever rebukes a person will in their end gain favor rather than one who has a flattering tongue. Now, let's talk about this. Rebuke is not a word we hear a whole lot. It's fallen out of fashion in church world today. Now, to rebuke someone, it means to give clarity on someone's moral standing. And it may involve arguments being made to or for them. So this is saying, hey, you're doing something wrong. It's kind of like years ago, I went to see my eye doctor and he examined my eyes and he asked me, he said, do you rub your eyes? And I said, oh, every night. I rub my eyes for a long time and it feels great. And he looked me in the face and he said, stop it. You're ruining your eyesight. And if you continue to do it, you're going to go blind. My optometrist rebuked me for something I was doing. Why? Because of the sake of my health. He saw something that needed correction and he loved me enough. Actually, I don't know if he loved me at all, but he cared about my eyes enough that he said something. And this is what a rebuke means, is that you love someone enough to say, what you're doing is not going well. And I love you enough to say something. Now, the person who does this the most in my life is my wife. And I'm so grateful for that. She will come to me and very graciously say something to the effect of, hey, I don't know if you know this, but the look on your face looked like you were kind of angry. Is that what you felt? And I feel awful because that's not what I was meaning to communicate. Or she has said to me, even recently, you interrupted me multiple times when we were talking, and I didn't like the way that made me feel. And my response right away was, that's not who I want to be. Thank you for telling me. I will watch out for interrupting you. I value what you have to say. And so a rebuke, it may hurt when you hear it, but it will save you. So 2 questions for us is, are we willing to rebuke somebody when necessary, like my wife does for me? Even in the New Testament, Paul rebuked Peter. Think about this. The Apostle Paul rebuked Peter, who was the one that God used to establish the early church the most. Paul rebuked him to his face because Peter had given up eating with Gentiles. Paul said, what you're doing is wrong. This isn't who you are, and this isn't what God has called you to. Are we willing to rebuke somebody when necessary? And the second question is, are we rebukable? I don't know if rebukable is a word. We're going to go with it. Another way we could say it is, are we teachable? Are we willing to hear from someone else that we're not living up to the way that we're supposed to? And I want to encourage you, friend, let's be people who are teachable. Let's be people who are willing to say something when someone is wrong in a spirit of love and gentleness. All right, let's finish this out. Verse 24, whoever robs their father or mother and says, it is not wrong, is a partner to one who destroys. The greedy stirs up conflict, but those who trust in the Lord will prosper. Those who trust in themselves are fools. Those who walk in wisdom are kept safe. Those who give to the poor will lack nothing, but those who close their eyes to them receive many curses. Now, we can't finish Proverbs 28 without noticing that the poor have been mentioned 6 times in this chapter. And the truth is that you cannot read the entire of the Old Testament, the entirety of the Bible, and not realize that God cares for the poor. God cares for the vulnerable. Now, we can debate who is poor, how to best care for the poor, all we want. But the biggest thing that this reminds us is that our heart should not be hardened to the poor. Our eyes should not be closed to the needy, and our hands should not stay stingy whenever there's a need, is that God blesses whenever we care for the poor. Now, let's close this out. 28, verse 28. When the wicked rise to power, people go into hiding. But when the wicked perish, the righteous thrive. Now, this last proverb is almost a word-for-word repetition of verse 12. And this is a reminder that the wicked who are described in the very beginning, in verse 1, the actively bad people, those who are guilty of forsaking and disobeying God's law, this is the end, is that when the wicked rise to power, people go into hiding. But instead, now they're contrasted with the righteous. These are people who are morally and ethically right because of their conformity, they're in alignment to God's word, to God's ways, to God's life. Now, these two worldviews are competing with each other every day. These two different ways of living in the world are at odds. They're at strife with one another. Wickedness versus righteous. And the question is, which will we choose? Which will I choose? Which will you choose? Will we choose righteousness? Will we choose wickedness? When the righteous triumph, there is great elation. There's great joy. When the wicked rise, men hide themselves. What will you choose in your home? Will you choose forsaking your own ideas and your own benefit? And will you choose to guard God's laws and God's ways? And when you choose righteousness, people live in joy and in freedom. And I want to encourage you to do that today. Friends, I hope you're encouraged by Proverbs 28. I enjoyed reading it and studying it. Let us know in the comments below which proverb jumped out at you the most. I am so curious which one it is. For me, I'll just tell you, it is verse 13 that has jumped out to me, is whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy. Which was it for you? Which one of these jumped out the most to you? I would love to hear it. And keep on tuning in. Tune in tomorrow for Proverbs 29. Huge thank you to Jeffrey for asking me to be a part of these 31 days of wisdom. I'm so thankful for you, my friend Jeffrey, for your ministry, for your commitment to the Bible and to God, and the example you are as a dad. I love you. And friends, keep tuning in and keep seeking wisdom. Blessings.